Here we are. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 14. Wow, 14 episodes of this live stream. I'm quite surprised how quick it's going, but welcome, everyone, to episode 14 of the Teacher Talking Time. And thank you for joining this week's live stream. I thought today I'd share a few bits of pieces, some news that's happening over the past week and this week as well, and potential news with regards to going forward to next week and what I'm up to. And also a couple of things with regards to how things are going overall, generally, I suppose, with teaching online, teaching remotely, how I feel, and maybe the struggles, the issues that you have, because remote teaching itself is a rather quiet, solitary affair. You're stuck at home, you're teaching students either in the same country as you or abroad, and what challenges, what issues does that what issues or challenges does that cause, and how do you overcome these challenges? And certainly over the last 2 years of teaching, almost 2 years of teaching remotely, I face challenges and struggles. Particularly I've just been working from home, but we have Eric here, and Eric has made it early, so thank you ever so much, Eric, for joining today. I'm glad you've made it. You made it early, so that's brilliant, and thank you ever so much. I hope you're enjoying your time in South Africa. Great to see your live streams are continuing despite you being in South Africa, where you're normally in South Korea, but it's a great joy. I know it was lovely to see in a past live stream where you introduced your parents and where you came from, so that's fantastic. Okay, now if we continue, I thought we'll get down into the nitty-gritty stuff of online teaching and how that can maybe demotivate teachers, and how it can impact students as well, and what sort of things that we need to look out for, particularly for mental health and the issues that and with regards to mental health, that can multiply when you're based at home and you're working from home, and you don't necessarily have anyone that you can talk to within the same environment. You've got I've got my wife and son and what have you, but teaching issues, who else can I talk to about the teaching issues, and how can I offload what the stress and the struggles, and what happens then with regards to teaching remotely. So the difficulties I've noticed, which can have a detrimental effect for online teachers, is the fact that, as I was mentioning, there's limited scope for teachers and educators to communicate with colleagues, and if you're teaching remotely within your own home, all you can see are maybe potential colleagues on the screen. All your students are on the screen, and I found the past almost 2 years have been quite a struggle in terms of how do I motivate myself to keep going, keep pushing myself, because of just being at home. And I thought one thing is you need to talk about it. You need to be honest with yourself, and you need to be honest with your family. They'll understand. They're probably in the same situation as you, because they're probably working from home and they have similar, if not different, struggles. And so you need to communicate. You need to speak to people, whether it's your family or your friends or your colleagues, and you need to be honest with them, because there's no harm in being having that sort of struggle in terms of your life and what have you. So that's where I am with regards to online teaching, and it's a funny old world. Anyway, in terms of other issues, screen time I mentioned, the lack of communication. Another issue is the fact that you're going to be working at home, and how do you differentiate the differences, the struggles between working within a home environment like this behind me, and dividing that home environment into a workspace. And I remember speaking to another person about this. What should we do when it comes down to dividing that space, that home environment, towards a work environment? What should we do? Because that blend between work and home is getting thinner and thinner, especially when you teach and work remotely. And one person told me, well, you should dress in your work attire, in your work clothes, and then get changed into something more comfortable once you're finished with work. So mentally you have that sort of break between, okay, this is me working, my suit, my tie, or whatever you want to wear for your teaching or work, and then, okay, I'm going to put on something more casual, some jeans and a t-shirt and a jumper or something like that. And this chap mentioned he'd been working for 3 or 4 years within a sort of home environment, and this was one recommendation that was made to him. And I thought, yeah, it kind of makes sense. You have that sort of break between, okay, this is my work within home, but I'm going to get changed, and that action of changing yourself from work to home mode is vital, I guess, in terms of dividing your time. And then obviously the fact that many teachers have one of these mobile devices nowadays means that they could be constantly working online. And one thing that I've noticed is, I get lots of notifications on my mobile when it comes down to Preply. I've been working on Preply. I'm not sure if you can see that, but Preply is there, and I get bombarded by notifications from Preply. And one thing I'm thinking of reducing is, okay, so after 6 p.m. I'm going to switch my notifications off, and also I'm going to stop looking at my emails. I'm going to just focus on me time. So that would be my second recommendation when it comes down to teaching remotely, trying to divide that time. So like between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. working remotely, these are the hours that I'm working, and then I'm going to switch my computer off after 6 p.m. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to have that time to myself. And funny enough, one thing that I really enjoy doing to relax and switch off is, one, my music. So you can see the piano behind me. I like my music. I play my saxophone. Music's a very important part of my life, and I've got LPs and other things like that. So music is one way to switch off from your work, online thought, and another aspect that I've decided to pursue, and something that I've been doing obviously for many years, is reading. And reading is also a very important part of my chance to relax and switch off from everything that's going on around me, switch off from emails, switch off from notifications, and to manage my own time by myself. And one book that I've been trying to read over the past 30 years. I bought this in, if I have a look at the date it was published, it'll give me an idea of when I bought it. It was published in 1995, so I would have been 17 then. So 1995, that gives you an indication of when I bought this book. And the book that I'm trying to read since then is Lord of the Rings. I've tried countless times to read this book, and it's a whole trilogy. You can see how thick it is. So I'm going to be, I've already got up to page 60. Well, almost page 60. So I'm quite keen to try and get into this book. And so far, I find it absolutely, captivating. I've read The Hobbit. I read The Hobbit when I was maybe 14. This is probably why I bought this book when I was 16, 17, because I'd already read The Hobbit. I really enjoyed that book. It was like diving into another world and with dragons and dwarves and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, I found that fascinating. Now let's get Lord of the Rings, the next book, so I can read this and get into the world of Tolkien and that sort of thing. But I never managed to get into it. I kind of found it too difficult. The Hobbit was very thin, very easy to read. Lord of the Rings, it's like Mount Everest, The Hobbit is like the hill you walk up, and Mount Everest, that's Lord of the Rings. Anyway, so one thing I would recommend many online teachers to do is to divide that time from work mode to relaxation mode with whatever hobbies that you enjoy doing, whether it's photography, whether it's music, whether it's reading, all sorts of things. So that's what I would recommend. Now, let's have a look at the chat. We've got Source and so Sharif is here. So hello, welcome back to the live stream. Thank you for joining me. We've got Eric. Yeah, he says Lord of the Rings is amazing. I agree. I totally enjoyed the first part. I'm still on the first chapter, but it's so densely written and such a creative book that I find it absolutely thrilling and captivating. And we look at the prologue. They talk about Middle Earth and hobbits and that sort of thing. Even Tolkien talks about pipe weed and how to smoke and that sort of things. And anyway, when you dive into it, into the first book, A Long Expected Party, the Fellowship of the Ring, it's really, really interesting. It takes off where The Hobbit finished, in a way. And, if you've watched Lord of the Rings on, the movies by Peter Jackson and that sort of thing, there's certain things in the book that you'll recognise, and adaptations from the book that have been put into the movie, but there's certain things which have not been included, or the timeline that kind of differs to the movie, and certain things that come up that don't come up in the film, and there's always this sort of difference. But that's what I love about reading, and particularly about movies that I really enjoy. I try and read the book of, and Lord of the Rings came out in the early 2000s. So it was 6-7 years after I graduated secondary school, or finished secondary school. 6 or 7 years after I attempted reading this book. And I sort of thought, well, I'm gonna watch the movie because I've read The Hobbit. I loved it. And yeah, I found the movie itself, the creativeness from Peter Jackson and the cast and the crew there was brilliant. And I'm back at it. New Year resolution: reading more books that I want to read, and certain things that I haven't read yet. And I'm not embarrassed to say I haven't read a lot of books, but there's certain books that I need to read before I get too old. If you can get too old for books, I don't think you can. One of them is George Orwell. I've not read 1984, so that's one book I want to read. I've read Animal Farm when I was younger, so I'd like to read that again. Again, a very basic book, but very simple. metaphor meaning behind it. So that would be one thing that I'd like to look at. And other book, Handmaid's Tale. I'd like to read The Handmaid's Tale. I've got that. And lots of poetry as well. So getting back into poetry. Obviously, with the live stream, I do a weekly poetry at the end of this live stream. And last week we did look at a poem, if I can find it. That is, what was it? I can't seem to find it now. Not to worry. I'm sure I'll find it soon. Anyway, got another poem for you at the end of this live stream. Any questions? We've got Eric here. He says, I still need to finish Silmarillion. Silmarillion. I'm not sure what that is. But let's see. Silmarillion. Oh, the book by Tolkien. I didn't know that. Mythopoetic stories by the English writer J.R.R. Tolkien. Edited and published posthumously by his son Christopher Tolkien in 1977. That's interesting. Now, I never knew that. I'm really interested in Tolkien's world. He was... Actually, one thing that I didn't know about Tolkien was he was a very, very keen and motivated language learner. He was so keen to learn variety of different languages like Arabic and Russian and all different types of languages. And this is what actually inspired his Elven language. He created his own alphabet, which was very similar to Arabic in a way. Rather than written right to left, it was written left to right. And I saw a video recently where there was a recording of Tolkien writing Elvish, his own language that he created, and he was writing a certain what would you say, phrase or something like that. He created it, and what was really interesting was he said, I've just made a mistake. And it's like, well, it's a made-up language by you, and you're saying you've made a mistake, but I found that really, really interesting. Anyway, back into the chat. We got Victor here. Victor says, hello. Hello, Victor. Nice to have you back. Welcome. So if there's any questions that anyone has, it would be great to review these questions with you. For the moment, I've already spoken a bit more about the struggles or the pressures that teachers may face encountering about online teaching. But one thing I haven't really spoken about is maybe the difficulties that students may face of remote learning or online learning. And if we have a think about students, they're going to be having challenges themselves. Online learning is as such that you can, the students that are motivated, intrinsically motivated, those that have that internal motivation, they're going to be struggling when it comes down to let me start again. Those with intrinsic motivation will not be struggling. They'll have that motivation to keep pushing, to do the self-study, to do what they need to do. But those without the intrinsic motivation, those that have issues or difficulties motivating themselves outside of lessons to complete tasks and activities, they're going to encounter a sort of wall. And much of it's about essentially how motivated you are, or how much you want to push yourself without other people pushing you. If you can push yourself as a learner, then you'll have no problem whatsoever. However, the issue arises, as I mentioned, is when they don't have that intrinsic motivation. And I've experienced now for a couple of, almost 2 years now, that the students that fail to motivate themselves, that fail to engage with whatever's being taught, have issues trying to achieve what needs to be achieved. And one thing that I've found incredibly useful, particularly during courses or lessons, is to spend some time with the students individually. So if you're teaching a group of students, say 12 for example, you need to spend at least some of that time speaking to each individual student to see how they feel with regards to their progress. Do students feel that it's too much? Or do students feel that they are making progress? Do students feel that they could be doing more? And you really need to have that time with individual students to spend a tutorial, we call it a tutorial, but, have that time one-to-one where you talk to the students and you say, look, you're doing really well here, you've done very well here, but there's certain aspects in these areas where you need to focus on. And, providing that much needed feedback to the students before it's too late. But I hope that kind of makes sense. It's pretty obvious, but especially within an online environment, I've noticed that tutorials or spending time with students is much more important than it was in a face-to-face environment, because that's when you can actually see if students have some difficulties that you need to support them with. But anyway, let me know. What are your thoughts? How do you feel, and how do you go about with tutorials? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. Anyway, one moment. I guess for me, when it comes down to tutorials or that side of things, speaking to the students, you need to ask them, what do you want to look at in future lessons? What do you want to achieve by yourself? What do you want to achieve outside of lessons? What are you doing now? What would you like to do? And getting the students to reflect, and this reflective practice is vital for students, so that they can say, okay, these are my difficulties and this is what I'm going to do about it. Anyway, let's have a look at funny enough, there was a blog post that I wrote up yesterday, and I shared this online, but I thought I'd share it with you here, and all free of charge, of course, and you can access the material if you wish. But let's see, here we go. You can see here, I wrote a blog post about using emojis in the classroom, and this is relatively new for me because I didn't really use emojis until I started texting and messaging people, and that was only a few years ago when I first started using emojis. But I tend to use it more and more now compared to before. Anyway, the reason why I got thinking about this was because there was a fellow teacher who ran a poll, and he said, "Do you use emojis in your in communication with students?" And I went, "Oh, really interesting." Never really thought about it myself, and I thought, yep, go for yes. I do, well, sort of yes, from time to time, I guess, with smiley face or that sort of thing. But very, very limited. But my opinion of emojis was that for formal communication like emails or within a online environment like a Canvas or Blackboard or whatever virtual learning environment that you're using, emojis were relatively less than I would do in informal communication. So my thought was formal, no, informal, yes, to a point, and with students from time to time. However, this got me thinking about when I used emojis, and I've used it in the past with beginner students, particularly from those in Southeast Asia who have very, very, very little English ability. They don't know the nouns, they don't know the adjectives, they don't know the question forms. And I thought, well, yeah, this is good. And I used it in my teaching. So, for example, I would write the question for the student, do you like apples? And, I put 2 apples, 3 apples, smiley face, question mark. Do you like? And then lots of visual gestures and that sort of thing. And do you not like apples? And shaking my head and, the same images from emojis. And I've used them. And beginner students seem to understand, obviously, because of the visual impact. Pictures are better than words, especially for beginner students. Emojis are wonderful for beginner students. And I thought, yes. But then it got me thinking, how else could I use these for maybe lower level students, like pre-intermediate, intermediate? And I thought, I'm going to make some material for this. So last night I spent a bit of time and I created my own material. And I've got a screenshot here where I used a variety of different emojis and variety of different adjectives, so you got someone who's laughing, it's hilarious, or, exhausted, tasty, boiling, like hot. And it's like, okay, so the next step is students match the emojis to the adjectives, and then they try and guess what the translation is. So rather than saying this is the, go and translate now, go and guess the translation based on the emojis and what you think it might mean, and then check the translation afterwards and see how many did you get correct. So that would be my thing. And then the next step would be for students to complete a story. Now, it would be really good if again, this is all available online. So let me just share the link with you. So bear with me. So there's the online material, and I've never really used emojis as a way of teaching adjectives, but it seems to make sense, doesn't it? Because you have a variety of different facial expressions and a variety of different adjectives, and it just seems to be quite a natural aspect. I suppose what you could do is start to incorporate a couple of nouns and blah de blah de blah, and there we are. Okay, now let me see if I can get the actual worksheet up for you. I never planned this to happen, but let's see. Bear with me. Here we go. Yay, I got it. There we are. So as you can see, the worksheet is available, and I've got a variety of different gestures and that sort of thing. And you match it here. Students discuss emojis. What other emojis do you know? How do you use them? When do you use them? What was the last emoji you used? Why did you use it? So it gets them thinking with regards to that. So that's a discussion part. And then after this discussion part, excuse me, I need my coffee. After the discussion part, I thought, well, maybe a story is necessary where the students try and put in. I need another drink, excuse me. Okay, so you have a story and you have the emojis, and the students have to use the language from before to try and share their own ideas, and they can be as creative as possible. So I created a story, and here complete the following text from suitable emojis using appropriate adjectives and nouns. Try and be as creative as possible. So there's not going to be just one answer. Okay. So here you can see, today I'm going to tell you a really hilarious, funny, humorous story. It could be whatever adjective the students think of. It's about a little or young or tiny, and then we got this emoji, rich, boy, or well off, or that sort of thing, etc., etc. And it continues and continues, and I've included a variety of images, not just the adjectives but nouns as well. So they set off into the forest, or they set off into the park, or whatever. And then we got this image here of a clown, and so you could put the clown or something like that. It carries on, and then students in the end decide to just finish off what they're doing, and then finally students compare what they've written with each other, and see which story they prefer, and can they retell the story without referring to the script or the storyline and that sort of thing. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I'm sure it does. But yeah, I thought this here is quite a nice activity to get students thinking of different emojis that could be used in the classroom. And I thought, yeah, it's a pretty good idea, all spurred on because of the tweet that was shared before from a fellow teacher, which then highlights the importance of perhaps connecting with other teachers. So if you're not on Twitter, check out Twitter, because it's a great website or social networking site, and yeah, Twitter's a fun, interesting place where you can connect with other teachers around the world. And you can see below somewhere here that I'm also on Twitter, so you can follow me there. And the thing I found useful about Twitter is the fact that you can ask a question. So I've had issues before where I go, I've got a lesson in the afternoon and I don't know what to do with this student. They want to focus on such and such, and any ideas from anyone on Twitter? And then I get quite a few replies from fellow teachers saying, why don't you do this, here's the material, da 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 da. And I found Twitter the most useful source for connecting with, seeking advice, and that sort of thing. So I hope that makes sense in a way. But anyway, let's have a look at the chat. We've got a few more chats popping up. Eric says, what does he say? I like the idea of using emojis, so thank you. It wasn't really my idea. It was just spurred on by an inspiring tweet by another teacher. But yeah, I prefer you being as creative as possible. And I think creativity is the key for success when it comes down to teaching, engaging your students and trying to motivate them. I think that's where we are, I guess. And I've already shared the link in the chat, so check it out. The material is all free. You can just access it. And, if you're able to donate a little bit just to keep the costs of the website going, or to buy me a coffee or another book, maybe another Tolkien book. So please feel free to donate whatever small amount you can offer. That would be greatly appreciated. We'll have a look, but yeah, any donations that would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, another aspect of online teaching, what's been happening with me? Well, since the new year, I think a strategy that I incorporated into was trying to target potential students. And if I review the past 2 weeks of the start of the year with my online teaching, you can see what's happened in the strategies I've had. But we've got Sharif here. She mentioned something. Let's have a look. It seems fun to change it up a little, make the lessons fun while still learning. Absolutely. So making making the lesson fun, engaging, where students feel that they're not, one, they're having fun, and two, they're learning, but they're not really knowing they're learning, if that kind of makes sense. I think the key is, how do you make your lesson as fun as you can? And one is the sense of humour with the tutor. For me, I try and incorporate humour. I'm not a comic or a comedian, but I try and project some sense of humour in the classroom and continue that on in a way. If it's whatever happens especially in a face-to-face lesson, I would be responding to what the students are saying, but not being overly serious, if that kind of makes sense. And so trying to make your lessons engaging and connected with the students and seeing what they're able to achieve, that would be great. And then before the students know it, they've actually learnt quite a lot of content. And fun material is better than open the grammar book again, present perfect versus the past simple yet again. That's important. Right, we've got Parushi Ruhil. He says, hi, what is your opinion on non-native teachers and how can one overcome that bias? I suppose the bias that you're referring to is the native versus non-native teacher dilemma, which I thoroughly dislike. Now, when it comes down to my opinion of non-native teachers, I feel quite inspired. I feel inspired by them because not only have they learnt their first language, they've also learnt and acquired a second language, and that being English, most would assume. Now, that holds a lot more respect than, let's call it as it is, a native speaker who can't speak another language. For me, I was terrible at languages. I was all right at German, never continued it. Hated French because that's what we all studied at school. And, again, I wasn't really interested. The teacher didn't make it interesting or fun or, engaging for me. I just wasn't motivated to learn French. And so I ended up just being monolingual to some regard. But for me, being monolingual, being just an English speaker with a bit of, a dash in of Korean here, then that holds a bit more, well, my position is slightly untenable. When you have someone who can communicate in 2, 3, 4 languages and teach English as well, that holds greater value than someone in my position. So my opinion of native teachers, some native teachers, is that for those that are just doing English teaching because they're fortunate to have been born by birth an English speaker or in an English speaking class, in an English speaking environment, country, then it seems a bit disingenuous to the whole education that, anyone can learn English. Yes, non-native speakers that acquire English and are able to teach it, that's commendable. And I've worked with some great non-native teachers and, teachers of English who speak it as a second language, but, Polish, people from Poland, people from Spain, and people from Korea and China, various other countries. They've all learned how to communicate in English, but they've also learned how to teach English. And I feel that these non-native teachers have more in common with the learners than maybe that I do. I've learned over time that students have these difficulties and challenges, and I'm learning slowly but surely that, I need to put myself in the position of the students so that I can understand and sympathise and empathise difficulties and struggles they're facing, not just linguistically but culturally as well. So for me, I'm trying to push into learning different languages and learning different cultures, and for the student to the benefit of the students at the end of the day. And I feel that non-native teachers have a lot more to offer than native teachers. That would be my first opinion. So that's first the first question. What's my opinion? Non-native teachers have more to offer than native teachers. The second question that you had was, how can we overcome this bias? And I think it's more to do with institutional biasness or in-country bias, because I'm not biased. I've worked with many great teachers, native or otherwise, and I would not hold them lower based on what I said earlier. Now, what could happen is this institutional bias or in-country bias where parents have to be educated. Like take, for example, the only example I can regard is South Korea, because that's where I had some of my experience from. But, in South Korea, it's quite a harmonious society. There's very little in terms of difference. Koreans see, not all, but some Koreans see English speakers as being just this nationality, just British, just American, just Canadian, just South African. but they don't see other variations of English. They don't see that, okay, my parents were Indian. They emigrated to the UK when I was 4. I was brought up in the UK. I was educated in the UK. I have Indian and I also Indian heritage in me, but I also have a bit of English culture and language. And this sort of variation can cause a bit of a, ooh, in Korea, like, oh, I didn't expect that. Like, oh, that goes against my beliefs of an English speaker. I've got a funny, well, not funny, but I've got a story that I was told by someone who, in Korea, he was walking down the street, and he wasn't white, but he was an English speaker from America, and a little boy, Korean boy, ended up pointing with his mum, said, look mum, Indian, ucha, ucha, or whatever it is, and it just felt so like, oh yeah, that cringeworthy, and you can't say that, you've got to respect people for who they are. And again, the boy, I guess, wasn't just going to do that. It was just his belief. He thought that all Indians look like this, or all, and his belief that all British men are gentlemen and wear a bowler hat and an umbrella or something like that, which is just nonsense. It doesn't work like that. It's sort of old-fashioned belief, but slowly I'm starting to see that Koreans are adapting and changing in their outlook, and this stereotype is starting to reduce. Anyway, how can we overcome it? Overcoming the bias is educating the parents, educating the students, educating the institutes, educating the government, educating people that variety is more important in terms of learning English, and we're all holders of this language, because essentially what English is just a language that we all communicate with. It's nothing more, and more emphasis has to be on sharing culture, sharing not just the linguistics of a language, but the cultural, socio elements of the language. So I make it my damnedest to try and share what my country is about and what sort of things are important in my country, more so now than before. So I hope that kind of helps, Parushi. And there's always going to be an element of institutes, schools, colleagues, and what have you, that may question it, but you have to stand up for what you believe, and you have to say, if they're wrong, they're wrong. Anyway, I hope that makes sense, and I hope I wasn't chatting too long. Sharif here says, non-native competent speakers have an advantage of knowing how hard it is to learn another language. I suggest not put nationality in any teacher application. Absolutely. To put a nationality in an application, or for institutes and schools to request a nationality, is illegal in the UK and in Europe. You cannot request someone to put their date of birth, their picture, anything like that. I know in America it's different, date of birth, photo. In South Korea, date of birth, photo, ID number, where you graduated. All these things are important, but they're important because how society functions in that culture. And I can understand in South Korea they want to know where you are in terms of the hierarchy, what's your educational level, and how are you in terms of where you are placed. Are you higher in regards to age and seniority? where they have to respect you, or does it work the other way down where they, you have to show a level of respect upwards? And I can understand that element within Korean society and other Southeast Asian countries. But in Europe, in the UK, you can't put your photo. Again, requesting a photo is illegal in the UK, and in Europe, requesting date of birth or the age of someone is illegal initially. You have to provide all that information as a element of process, but that's essentially where we are. Yeah. Now, where were we? We have got to have a look at my schedule, how it was in terms of the past month to date, I guess. Let's see if I can just move this slightly up and move it across. Yay. Okay, we're getting there. All right, there we go. That's better. Okay, so as you can see, beginning of the year, January the 3rd, that's when I started opening classes, and I had a couple of classes, started getting a few trial lessons on Preply, which was good. And around Saturday the 8th of January, I had a sort of idea. It was like ping, and I thought, okay, my rate was $30 an hour, or it is now. I thought everybody's going to be thinking, I want to study English. I want to, this is New Year resolution. I'm going to be studying English. So I put my rate down from $30 to $20. And the following week, I ended up with quite a few trial lessons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 trial lessons. And I thought, oh my gosh, 9 trial lessons. And Sunday, boom, I knocked it out. I was like, I need a rest. So yesterday I was having a break, reading my book and that sort of thing. But Monday was completely full of just trial lessons. And you could start to see, things were starting to get busier and busier. This week, this is where I am now. 1, 2, 3, 4 trial lessons. I've got a variety of different classes all booked up. Probably, where are we? We've got 5, 6, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22, 23, 26, 30. Oh my gosh, it's nearly 40 hours in the week. So 40 hours this week where I am going to be absolutely shattered. I've been booked up. And next week I've had to move everything around. Next week people haven't booked up fully yet, but I've had to move things around. And you can start to see Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I've blocked up. And that is because I'm going to be working as a sort of teaching assistant, supply teacher for the state schools, or primary, secondary schools. Teaching assistant for some, or for most subjects, and also lead teacher, I guess, or supply teacher, cover teacher for English, if required. And so next week, from Wednesday, I'm going to be getting up really early, going into these schools from 8:30 till 3:30, coming back home, and then I've got my lessons in the evening, my private lessons in the evening. So it's going to be a bit of a sort of different feeling next week. The amount of lessons I've got this week are quite a lot. and that's including the weekend, so 7 days this week of just teaching. But I'm looking forward to a change, and also supplementing my income elsewhere and diversifying, because at the moment my income is solely related to how many students can book, how many hours do I have, and it can go up and down. This week is probably the best week I've had so far on Preply in terms of how many students have booked lessons. But next week, Wednesday to Friday, during the day, I'm unavailable. But that means just Monday and Tuesday mornings plus evenings. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just evenings only. And then the weekend as well. So busy. Anyway, any final questions before we finish off with my poem? Any poetry needed? I think so. And I think I have found the poem that I want to read, but let's have a look. First of all, so for those that were here last week, oh yes, the poem that I read last week was about the history of doing nothing. Procrastination. I remember now. Anyway, right. Yeah, and it was Patrick McGuinness, The History of Doing Nothing, which I was reading. I remember. And I thought, Poems of the Decade, an anthology of the 4 books of poetry. I could either read another poem from this book, or I could grab another book on the back shelf. Let me just see. I'm going to grab another book. So one book I've got here, John Keats, The Major Works. So let me have a look. Sleep and Poetry. Let's see. To my brother George. Okay. Sleep and Poetry. Whoa, that's a long one. Sleep and Poetry. I think I'll give that a miss, because we're going on 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. Oh my gosh. No, we're not going to read that because you'll all fall asleep by the end of it, I guess. Right, what else we got? Sleep, Poetry, addressed to Hayden. Keats is a lovely poet, but they do go on for a bit. And I'm just trying to find one which is not too short, because it's either too short or too long. I think I found one. Okay. And I thought this one, let's have a look at this one. And this one, again, is called You Say Love, but with a Voice. Quite an interesting poem. So already I'm thinking, okay, you can express your love in different ways, either verbally or emotionally, but this one, you say love but with a voice. Okay. You say love but with a voice chaster than a nun's, who singeth the soft vespers to herself, while the chime bell ringeth, O love me truly. You say love but with a smile, cold as sunrise in September, as you were St. Cupid's nun, and kept his weeks of ember, O love me truly. You say love, but then your lips, coral tinted, teach no blisses, more than coral in the sea, they never pout for kisses, O love me truly. You say love, but then your hand, no soft squeeze, for squeeze returneth, It is like a statue's dead, while mine for passion burneth. O love me truly. O breathe a word or two of fire. Smile as if those words should burn me. Squeeze as lovers should. O kiss, and in thy heart inurn me. O love me truly. Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, rather powerful, that one. A lot to unpack on that poem. I never thought it would be quite a big one. Wow, I like that. That one was nice. I hope you enjoyed that poem. And thank you for joining today. I really appreciate it. In the meantime, keep yourselves busy, keep yourselves happy, keep yourself going. I've got another few videos coming out soon, one about IELTS writing, particularly aimed for students, so there's quite a few videos in the pipeline. I've also got another video on introduction videos for potential students. This one has been on my to-do list for such a long time, so I can't wait to share that with you soon. In the meantime, have a lovely week. Thank you for joining today's live stream, Teacher Talking Time, episode 14 already. But take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next week, episode 15. And again, thanks ever so much for everybody joining. I'll see you soon, and bye-bye. That's the wrong one. That's it. I got there in the end. That's the same. That's the right screen. Okay, bye-bye.